All right, so what might be useful is if we work through an example. This is one that's coming right out of your textbook, but we're going to be looking at the data for the owner of a ski hill. So they're trying to sell snowboards. They'd like to know the heights of the people that are coming in. So what they've done is they've taken data for 1,000 different customers or different occupants, and we're going to record all their heights and the number of people within those heights. So I'm just going to fade to that. There we are. I'd recommend pausing the video here so you can get this down, just because I'm going to be covering it in literally a second. All right, and just a few more pieces of information. If you want to calculate it using your calculator, by all means. I just use Excel for this. Calculate the mean, so x bar or mu, that's going to be 69.521 inches. Calculate your standard deviation, that's about 2.987. And you'll have to find the median as well. It looks like it's about 69.5. The reason why I'm doing this is I want to see how close my median is to my mean. The closer they are together, the more reasonable my data is going to be. All right, so this is where it's going to get fun. We're going to be making our own bell curve or normal distribution. Hopefully, we want to see if it works or not. So we've taken this data, I'm just going to squeeze back here. So we've taken the data from our table of values, and we're going to be plotting it onto a graph as if we're just drawing a histogram, because that's exactly what we're doing. We need to have our intervals on the bottom. I'm just using the intervals that we've got listed here already because we already have intervals, so what's the point of changing that? If you want to, you can, but we have so many data points, right? We have 1,000 people that were tested when we add all these numbers up that it should look nice with the more that we plot. So bear with me, I'll do the first few bars. I'll explain to you how I got those, and then we'll continue on. So I just got a few of the histogram bars laid out here. All I'm doing is I'm reading off of my table of values. So for example, 61 or shorter, there's only 3 people. So I have like almost nothing listed on the bar there. For 61 to 62, again, compared to my frequency, there's only 4, which is a very small amount. So that's why you only see a small piece. The next one is 10, so about 1/4 between 0 and 40. 10 is 1/4. So that's why I have about a quarter here. And I've continued that pattern. So I'm going to finish the graph. And there we are. That's what our histogram looks like. So from our histogram, there's 2 things that we need to recognize. The first thing is this mean is a really important value. It should be the highest peak and it should be in the middle. So here's our highest peak, and our mean should be right down the middle of that bar. So I'm going to draw that in. The second thing that we want to do is we want to now draw a frequency polygon. And the way we're going to do that is by taking the midpoint of every single one of our bars and connecting them. So let's do that real quick, and then let's see what it looks like. And that's our frequency polygon. And the whole point, so the histogram is to get a graph in place. Just by looking at the graph, you can kind of see it's a bell shape. The frequency polygon has 2 purposes. One of them is that one of the data points ends up being your mean because it's the middle or the midpoint of a bar. The other thing is once you have your lines in place for your polygon, it should resemble a bell shape if you have a normal curve. And this kind of does, right? It kind of looks like that bell curve that we're looking for. Okay, but what did we learn from doing that? Well, what we can do now is we can apply the information we had before, doing 2 times our mean, 2 times our standard deviation and 3 times our standard deviation, to figure out what percentage of people can be supported by certain snowboard sizes based on what the problem we're working with. So let's start off by looking at 68% of people. All right, so to calculate this, we're going to do 2 calculations. One of them is going to be our mean plus our standard deviation. One's going to be our mean minus our standard deviation. So we're going to do that by the top. Okay, and what we've determined is that within the range of 66.5 inches, down over here, and 72.5 inches, 68% of the people coming to this snowboarding hill are going to fall within those heights. If we plot that on our normal distribution, we look for 66.5, which is 66, here's 66.5, And if we look for 72.5, 72 is here, 72 is here. We do the same thing before where we cut off our intervals. Looks like, based on our graph, more than 50%, which is 68%, more than 50% of our clientele happens to be in that part of the graph. So it makes sense. What we can do is we can continue that one more step and do our mean plus or minus 2 times our standard deviation. So I'll put that up there on the board for you. Our picture's gotten a little messy, but as you can see, we're looking at 75.5 inches and 63.5 inches. So I've labeled those 2 points on your graph here, and now shaded in a further portion of your graph. And you should have about 95% of your graph covered based on that distribution. Okay, and I've shown you the math over on the end here as well. Now, Mr. K, do we need to draw a graph every time? No, absolutely not. This is a huge time waster if you're doing it every single time. If you can find an app or if you can figure out how to work with Excel on this, absolutely do that. If you just want to do the calculations, that's totally fair game. But the visual is really nice, and in the future you will be asked to draw. So in your practice you'll be asked to draw, and I know on your exams you'll be asked to draw as well. So it's a good habit to practice. I'm going to give you quite a bit of practice on that. Like I said, the first little bit is going to be tough, but as you get through it, I think it'll get a little bit easier as you get near the end of the assignment. So I understand this is a lot. Please do give it an honest attempt. Let me know if you get stuck somewhere. As soon as I have a chance, I'd love to give you a tutorial video on this. And at the end of the week, you can expect a homework check, Dropbox kind of thing to become available, so you can try that out. And we'll take it from there. So your assignment is going to show up down here. And as always, it's a pleasure working with everyone, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we progress with this.